Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Namo
Om
Bhagavate
Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskrityam
Narayanam
Narayanam
Namaskrityam.
Namaskrityam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Naram
Naram
Chaiva
Chaiva
Narottamam.
Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devim Saraswatim
Devim
Vyasam.
Saraswati Vyasam.
Tato Jayamudirayet
Tato
Tato
Jayamudire.
Jayamudire.
Nashtaprayasu Abhadresu
Nashtaprayesu
Nashtaprayesu
Abhadresu.
Abhadresu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam
Nityam
Bhagavata
Bhagavata
Sevaya.
Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttama Sloke
Bhagavati
Bhagavati
Uttama
Uttam
Sloke.
Sloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki.
Bhaktir
Bhaktir
Bhavati
Bhavati
Naistiki.
Naistiki.
Reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 15, titled The Yoga of the Supreme Person, and the verse number is 15. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivisto
Sarvasya
Sarvasya
chaham hridhi
chaham hridhi
sannivisto.
sannivisto.
matta smritirjnanam apohanam cha.
Mattaha
Matta smritirjnanam
smritirjnanam
apohanam
apohanam
cha.
cha.
Vedaischa sarve ahameva vedyo
Vedaisya
Vedai cha
sarve
sarvai ahameva
ahameva vedyo.
vedyo.
Vedanta krit veda vidaiva chaham.
Vedanta
Vedanta
krit
krut
veda
veda
videva
videva chaham.
chaham.
Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivisto
Sarvasya
Sarvasya
chaham
chaham
hridhi
hridhi
sannivisto.
sannivisto.
matta smritirjnanam apohanam cha.
Mattaha
Matta smritirjnanam
smritirjnanam
apohanam
apohanam
cha.
cha.
Vedesya sarve ahameva vedyo
Vedaisya
Vedai cha
sarve
sarvai ahameva
ahameva
vedyo.
vedyo.
Vedanta krit veda vidaiva chaham.
Vedanta
Vedanta
krit
krut
veda
veda
videva
videva
chaham.
chaham.
Any Prabhujis or Matajis would like to lead?
Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivisto.
Sarvasya
Sarvasya
chaham
chaham
hridhi
hridi
sannivisto.
sannivisto
Matta smritirjnanam apohanam cha.
Mattaha
matta
smritirjnanam
smritirjnanam apohanam
apohanam
cha.
cha.
Vedai cha sarvai ahameva vedyo.
Vedaisya
Isya
sarve
sarve
ahameva
ahameva
vedyo.
vedyo
Vedanta krud veda dive videva chaham.
Vedanta
Vedanta
krit
krit
veda
veda
videva
vidaiva chaham.
chaham.
सर्वस्य चाहं हृदि सन्निविष्टो
Sarvasya
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 chaham
chaham
hridhi
chaham hridi
hridhi
sannivisto.
sannivisto
sannivisto.
मतः स्मृतिज्ञानम् अपोहनं च
Matta
Mattaha
matta
smritirjnanam
smritirjnanam
apohanam
apohanam
smritirjnanapohanam
cha.
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 वेदैश्च सर्वैरहमेव वेद्यो
Vedaisya
Vedai
Vedesya
cha
sarve
sarvai
sarve
ahameva
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 vedyo.
vedyo.
vedyo
वेदान्तकृद्वेदविद् एव चाहम्
Vedanta
Vedanta
krit
krit
Krut
veda
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 videva
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 chaham.
chaham.
chaham. Word by word meaning, Sarvasya of all living beings,
Sarvasya
Sarvasya
of
of
all
all
living
all
living
beings.
living beings.
Cha and
च and
Cha
Cha
and
and
Aham I,
अहम्
aham
I
aham
I.
I.
Pridi in the heart,
हृदि
Priti
in the
in the
Hridhi in
heart
the
heart.
heart.
Sannivista situated,
सन्निविष्ट
Sannivishta
Sannivishta
situated
situated.
situated.
Matta from me,
मतः
Mattaha
from
Matta
for me.
from me.
Smriti remembrance,
स्मृतिः
Smriti
Smriti
remembrance
remembrance.
remembrance.
Jnanam knowledge,
ज्ञानं
Jnanam
knowledge
Jnanam
knowledge.
knowledge.
Apohanam forgetfulness,
अपोहनं
Apohanam
Apohanam
forgetfulness
forgetfulness.
Cha
forgetfulness.
and
Cha
च
and
and
Cha and
Vede by the Vedas.
Vede
Vede
Veda.
by the
Vede by
Vedas.
the Vedas.
Cha also.
Cha
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 also.
also.
Survey all.
Sarvai
Survey
all.
Survey
on.
all.
Aham I am.
Aham I am.
I
I
am.
am.
Eva certainly.
Eva
Eva
certainly.
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 Vedya knowable.
Vedo
Vidya
knowable.
Vidya
knowable.
knowable.
Vedanta Krit, the compiler of the Vedanta.
Vedanta Krit,
Vedanta
the
Krut, the
compiler of the
compiler
Vedanta.
of the Vedanta.
Vedavit, knower of the Veda.
Vedavid,
Veda
the
Vid,
knower
knower
of
Vedavid,
the
of the
the
Vedas.
Vedas.
knower of the Vedas.
Eva certainly.
Eva
Eva
certainly.
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 Cha and.
Cho and.
Cha and.
Aham I.
Aham
Aham
I.
I.
Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Ki Jai.
I am seated in everyone's heart,
I am seated
I
in
am
everyone's
seated in
heart,
everyone's heart.
and from me come remembrance,
and from
And
me
From
come
from
me
me
remembrance,
come
come
remembrance.
remembrance.
knowledge and forgetfulness.
knowledge and
Knowledge and
forgetfulness.
forgetfulness.
By all the Vedas,
By all the
By
Vedas,
all
the
the
Vedas.
Vedas,
I am to be known.
I am to be
I am
known.
to be known.
Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta.
Indeed, I am the
Indeed,
compiler
I
of
am the
Vedanta,
compiler of
Vedantas.
Vedanta.
I am the knower of the Vedas.
and
And
I am
I
the
am the
knower of the
knower of the
Vedas.
The
Vedas.
knower of the Vedas.
Any Prabhujis or Matajis would like to read this page?
The Supreme Lord is situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it is from him that all activities are initiated. The living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is witness to all his work. Therefore, he begins his work according to his past deeds. Required knowledge is supplied to him, and remembrance is given to him, and he forgets also about his past life. Thus, the Lord is not only all pervading, he is also localized in every individual heart. He awards the different fruitive results. He is worshipable not only as the impersonal Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the localized Paramatma, but as the form of the incarnation of the Vedas as well. The Vedas give the right direction to people so that they can properly mold their lives and come back to Godhead, back to home. The Vedas offer knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and Krishna in his incarnation as Vyasadeva is the compiler of the Vedanta Sutra.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Anyone else would like to read this page?
Antaha pravishtaha sashta.
No,
Sorry,
Prabhuji,
the
from the top.
commentation on the Vedanta Sutra by Vyasadeva in the Srimad Bhagavatam gives the real understanding of the Vedanta Sutra. The Supreme Lord is so full that for the deliverance of the conditioned soul, he is the supplier and the digester of foodstuff, the witness of his activity and the giver of knowledge in the form of Vedas, and as the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, the teacher of the Bhagavad Gita, he is worshipable by the conditioned soul. Thus, God is on good, God is on merciful. Antaha pravishta sashta jananam. The living entity forgets as soon as he quits his present body, but he begins his work again, initiated by the Supreme Lord. Although he forgets, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended his past life. So not only does a living entity enjoy or suffer in this world according to the dictation from the Supreme Lord situated locally in the heart, but he receives the opportunity to understand the Vedas from him.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Anyone else would like to read this last page of the purport?
If one is serious about understanding the Vedic knowledge, then Krishna gives the required intelligence. Why does he present the Vedic knowledge for understanding? Because a living entity individually needs to understand Krishna. Vedic literature confirms this. Yo sau sarver veder gyate. In all Vedic literature, beginning from the four Vedas, Vedanta Sutra, and the Upanishads and Puranas, the glories of the Supreme Lord are celebrated. By performance of Vedic rituals, discussion of the Vedic philosophy, and worship of the Lord in devotional service, he is attained. Therefore, the purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. The Vedas give us direction by which to understand Krishna and the process of realizing him. The ultimate goal is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedanta Sutra 1.1.4 confirms this in the following words: Tat tu saman vayat. One can attain perfection in three stages. By understanding the Vedic literature, one can understand his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By performing the different processes, one can approach him. And at the end, one can attain the supreme goal, who is no other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, the purpose of the Vedas, the understanding of the Vedas, and the goal of the Vedas are clearly defined.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Let's all chant together. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyana Janashalakaya Chakshurmilitam
Janashalakaya
Yena Tasme Sri Gurave Nama Sri Chaitanya Manovishnam
Bhavitam Yena
Yena
Bhutale
Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Bandeham
Shri Guru
Shri
Sri Pada Kamanam Sri
Shri
Guru
Guru
Vaishnavamcha
Vaishnavamsha
Sri
Sri
Rupam
Rupam
Sagrajatam
Sagrajatam
Sahagana
Sahagana
Raghunathanvikam
Raghunatham Vitam Tam
Tam
Sajivam
Sajivam Sadvaitam
Tam
Savaduta
Savadutam
Parijana
Parijana
Sahitam
Sahitam
Krishna
Krishna Chaitanya
Chaitanya
Devam
Devam
Sri
Sri Radha
Radha
Krishna Padam
Vishpadam
Sahagana
Sagana
Lalita
Lalita
Sri
Sri
Visakanitam
Radhavitam
Cha
Sha
He
Sri
Krishna
Krishna
Karuna
Karuna
Sindhu
Sindhu
Dinabandhu
Dinabandhu
Jagatpate
Jagatpate Gopesh
Gopesha
Gopika
Gopika
Kanta
Kanta Radha Kanta
Radhakanta
Namaste
Namastute Tapta
Tapta
Kanchana
Kanchana Gaurangi
Gaurangi
Radha
Radhe
Vrindavani
Vrindavaneshwari
Vrishabhanu Suti
Shivanuste
Devi
Devi
Pranamami
Pranamami
Hari
Hari
Priye
Priye
Vanchakalpa
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha
Tarubhyascha Kripa
Kripa
Sindhubhya
Sindhubhya
Eva
Eva
Cha
Cha
Patitanam
Patitanam
Pavanebhyo
Pavanebhyo
Namo
Namo
Namaha
Namo Jai
Jai
Shri
Shri Krishna
Krishna
Chaitanya
Chaitanya
Prabhu
Prabhu
Nityananda
Nityananda
Shri
Shri
Advaita
Advaita
Gadadhara
Gadadhar
Srivasadi
Srivasadi
Gaura
Gaura
Bhaktavrinda
Bhakta Vrinda
Krishna
Krishna
Hare
Hare
Krishna
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 Hare
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 Rama
Rama
Hare
Hare
Rama
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 Hare
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 Hare Nilachal Nivasa Nitya Paramatmane Balabhadra Shudrapang Jagannathaya Namo Te Namo. Thank you so much for joining this Sangha. It's a wonderful time when we were discussing in a focused manner about the systematic step-by-step of this wonderful chapter where the yoga with the Supreme Person is being discussed. And this word specifically, Krishna is very profound in explaining that Sarvyasya Chaham Hridi Sannivisto. That means he's actually present in all our hearts. So when somebody is present in our heart, he is inside our heart, so he's the closest. And as we discussed, from Mahavishnu, then from Mahavishnu, the expansions being Garbhodakshay Vishnu, the first quadruple expansion, and then eventually Kirodakshai Vishnu, who is present in each of our heart as super soul, and whether it is a human being or an animal, the Krishna as super soul is there. So here Krishna is reinforcing that by saying Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Sannivishta. That means he's seated in everyone's heart. And then he's saying Mattas Pratiri Jnanam Apohanam Cha. That means from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, our ability to remember something, our ability to gain some knowledge, and our ability for forgetfulness. Smriti means remembrance. Jnana means knowledge. Apohana means forgetfulness. So Krishna, as you know, when we transmigrate from one body to another, see, we are made of 5 gross elements and 3 subtle elements. The 3 subtle elements travels with us to the next life. And because of the desires, we have unfulfilled desires across a period of time, across the birth, when we leave the body, the gross body stays behind, but the subtle man, buddhi, ahankara, mind, intelligence, false ego travels. So that's the reason why when we focus our attention on mind with to Krishna, intelligence to Krishna, and getting rid of the ahankar to Krishna, those good deeds, those pious credits travels. And when this pious credit travels, we forget who we were, right? So that forgetfulness, Krishna is saying, over a period of time, whether it's forgetting, whether you're getting dementia, whether you're forgetting across your lifespan when you're transmigrating from one body to another, we are still the same soul, but we have forgotten where we came from. And over a period of time, with the desires, we tend to remember, we gain knowledge again, and we start from zero in terms of knowledge. But there are certain very spiritually inclined individuals, you'll see that they remember their past life. So that means that's remembrance or forgetfulness, and the ability to acquire knowledge comes from Krishna. And Krishna is emphatically saying that here in this 15.15. And then Krishna goes on to say, Vedesh sarver ahameva Veda. That means by all the Vedas, I am to be known, because he wrote it. And how he wrote it? Vedanta Krit Veda with Eva Chaham. That means Vyasadeva is an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Vyasadeva, when he wrote the Vedanta Sutra, and so he is the knower of the Vedas. So here Krishna is establishing his position as a maintainer of this entire world. And that is where we have to understand, whenever we have people living in this August gathering, they may be sitting very close to each other, but the person who is inside our heart is actually the closest. And that is referred here in the second picture you see here, where Krishna is in the hearts of somebody who is chanting, somebody who is a animal or a bird, whatever the case may be. Inside the heart, you see the picture of Krishna everywhere. And that picture is compared on a localized manner as two birds who are sitting on a tree, where one bird is eating the fruits and the other bird is watching, exactly like Krishna is watching this. So whenever we are eating the fruits, there is somebody watching. And who is that person watching? Not our dad, because most of the time our parents, our friends are not close to each other, so they're not watching. But every time there is somebody who is watching, and he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Krishna is emphatically saying that. And then, and this comparison has gone on forever. So whenever we think we're doing some mistake or doing something which is not right, there is definitely somebody who's watching, and that definite person is none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So how we can recognize that this person is close, and how we would end up doing service to him? See, whenever we hear things about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we arouse that sense of knowledge, and that sense of knowledge uh, leads us to have a relationship with him through our desire or our determination and devotion. So say, for example, we are in a room, and I say uh, I say that I'm having a headache, for example. When I'm saying I'm having headache, everybody has heard it. Everybody has heard that I'm having headache. But our ability to process that, and ability to do something, our desire to hear, and our determinations to step up because we are seated, and then our love to get Amrutanjan from the corner is different for different people. What I mean by that is, some people who have heard it and they take it as an intelligence, and they will speak somewhere these verses, and they will be okay. But that's not the ultimate reason to have a relationship. The ultimate way to have a relationship is to internalize what you have heard and do it in practice. And then you realize that there is an establishment of love. So when I'm having headache, I'm saying, I'm having headache. You have all have heard it, but just hearing is not enough. So then the hearing should, you should have a desire to hear, then we should have a determination to get up, and then we should have a love and care for the person, that this person who is very dear to you is having a headache, and we should go and get the Amritanjan or whatever the case may be. sensor or whatever it may be. So that ability to understand knowledge has to be done with a practical viewpoint, a viewpoint where there is love. Then hearing knowledge is just data, right? So that's the difference between data and information and analytics. And analytics leads to, descriptive, prescriptive, and recommended. You all have, understood that from your, data analytics, AI, ML knowledge, artificial intelligence, machine learning knowledge. But our ability to apply that love or care for somebody with the intent to bolster that relationship is nothing but devotion or love. And that is where, just by hearing Krishna, as Krishna is in our heart, he is in the closest position. And that closest position of relationship is not enough unless you end up doing something, unless we end up, whenever you like somebody, you give a bouquet of flowers. If you do not express that element of love through a bouquet of flowers, then love is all about details. Without expression, there is no love. So likewise, what is being mentioned here is, so we have to understand bhakti in a sense, as Srila Prabhupada is going through in these verses, that unless we put that relationship into practice by a sense of desire, determination, and our ability to do something in the form of devotion, whether it is calling out the name or doing garland or helping out in the festivals, unless we have that sense of belonging or sense of devotion, that soul and super soul relationship in our heart is just data. It's not information. It's not analytics, really. So what Krishna is saying is, the information is there. The information that I am, Krishna is seated in everyone's heart. And from him, our ability to remember across lives or start from the scratch, because we have desire and we are ready to fulfill, because we are part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But because of our independence nature, we tend to believe that we are alone, and we tend to have a sense of enjoyment without the Supreme. Once we realize that, we go in our merry old way, but the fact remains that there is somebody watching, and we are not doing justice to that somebody. So Krishna has expressed that in many verses, but here especially, the way to understand somebody who is close to our heart is by doing something for that person. In the sense, the example being, I'm having headache, somebody takes care of it. Just by hearing that I'm having headache, you've all heard about it, but that's where it ended. But bhakti is a step further, where we have a practical implementation of that relationship. And that practical relationship can only be established as somebody who is closest to us. And who is closest to us? Who is inside our heart, not somebody with whom we're having a personal relationship, which is temporary, 50, 60, 70 years. That's definitely not a relationship. There is no doubt we should help in those relationships, but in this lifetime, we have to have a fixed opportunity to sort of bolster that relationship. So if you have understood that as, Krishna is in our heart and we need to have a relationship, if you recognize that Krishna is in our hearts and keep it to a bookish knowledge and not have the relationship, then it doesn't serve the purpose. You all have heard, I have headache. It doesn't help. The only way it can help in this example, when we're trying to discuss about these proponents or the concepts, we realize that unless we do something, unless we have a sense of desire, determination, devotion, we are not going to establish or reinforce or bolster that wonderful relationship with the closest person who is always watching us, but we are always uh, doing our face in the reverse direction. He is constantly watching us exactly like this bird, but we are constantly eating the fruits of the tree without really bothering about that. And the only way we can only take care of this closest person who is in our heart is by the sense of desire, determination, devotion to bolster that relationship. So as we discussed, we just want to tie it back to where it all began, that this material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So the spiritual world being good, there is definitely something good here. It's not as if everything in this material world is bad. But as you can see, these branches are very intertwined. They are, whenever a branches are very intertwined, if you're stuck inside, like as you can see, this person is materially, sensually attracted, and this person, he's trying to get out of the branch um, and come out into the root where he can let go free. He's not able to do it. It's because we have chosen to entangle us. And this chapter is very, very powerful in establishing that. So I just want to have that basic understanding that this material world is, as Krishna mentions, Swatham is the reverse banyan tree, and we have discussed that. So I just wanted to tie it back to that concept, and now we are into the third section of this chapter, so that we are so this we should not lose focus of this thing, that in this world, a person in dementia tends to forget, and because as we age we forget, we think it is because of the tissue, but constantly remembering where we came from and having a close relationship with the closest person will bolster that. And here Krishna is establishing as a maintainer. And also, whenever we talk about the karma kandas, the jnana kandas, in terms of the basic principles, and these are all have written from Vedas, and the writer of it being Vyasadeva, and then eventually this Veda is huge, and trying to get a understanding from it may not be that as easy as getting a good understanding from Bhagavad Gita. But still, Krishna is establishing the fact that he is the creator, he is the writer of the Veda, and he is fully aware and knowledgeable about Vedas, so that whenever we have a misconception about who the Supreme is and who has really created this material world under his watch, by kind of giving the secondary creation, Visarga, through Brahmaji, we recognize that the most knowledgeable person who knows all the Vedas is Krishna himself, and Krishna is kind of establishing that. So I can go on, but would like to have some discussion. But always think about that fact that uh, just because we have known something, it is advantageous to us. We need to take a step further in doing something. Like if you care for your husband, you would end up doing something which is favorable to his thing. Just knowing the husband is not enough, or knowing the wife is not enough, knowing the kid is not enough. It's our ability to have that sense of devotion. So whenever, that's the reason why whenever we learn about bhakti, when we practice bhakti, it kind of spells everywhere. So these Krishna conscious devotees, they will be going around distributing books, distributing prasadam, but because the intent is they are paradukhe dukhi, they are sad when they see sad people, and that ability to do something when somebody is in headache is to step out and do something, not just hear it and keep it like that, as an intelligent person would end up doing. We are not intelligent persons because we know stuff. We are intelligent because we know and do. And that is why always we have to have that sense of uh, what the intent is. and our ability to take a step ahead and focus on the internals to have a relationship. Without a good relationship, there is absolutely nothing we can do. And Krishna is just saying this to make us aware that he is the closest and we shouldn't be running away from him. We should be doing all that what it takes to bolster that relationship, whether in the form of chanting or in the form of reading books, getting more knowledge about him, or serving him through offering bhoga and doing relationships, so that that spirit of devotion culminates in our actions in various different places, and we become a service oriented person in our life and help the society, and not just be a knowledgeable person. Knowing all of this doesn't make sense unless we utilize it. So with that, I'd like to end here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Hare Krishna. Want to hear some questions, comments, reflections, corrections, so that we understand this verse closely, and we discuss it and apply it in our lives in whatever way we can. Any comments?
Prabhuji, very good example of the Amurtanjan. That is very lucid explanation, Prabhuji. Not able to hear, Prabhuji? Let me close the door.
No, I can hear. We can hear. Prabhu. Go ahead.
So what I was telling was, Prabhuji, the Amurtanjan example is very, very, very good, Prabhuji, because it is like this, Prabhuji. We have the knowledge, but the most important is the realization. The person who heard that they have a headache had the knowledge that they had the headache, but who goes and brings the balm or the Amurtanjan is the person who is realized that what is the solution, or what needs to be done. That is exactly what is Prabhuji's devotional service, that we know, first of all, we identify our position, Prabhuji, our natural position, or constitutional position, what Prabhupada always says is that we are servitor, Prabhuji. And that servitor should be devotion. The other point, Prabhuji, which you told, the two birds also is very classic. When the local bird surrenders to the super soul, that when he tries to do, that is what is surrender, Prabhuji. So surrender is the one where we basically dovetail ourselves, the local bird with the other bird which is watching us, because we know that the other bird is watching us. So we should be that is what is consciousness. We say, right, my consciousness is not allowing that. That means we established our connection with that other bird which is watching us. That is trying to tell that, okay, this should be done, or this need not be done, or this has to be done, whatever that situation is, Prabhuji. Right? So how that comes is through knowledge to realization, and the realization leads us to surrender, Prabhuji, and surrender. And all this is is overarched by the devotional service. Through devotional service, we get all this, Prabhuji. So this also, as you told, Prabhuji, this 1515 is known as the Bhashya. What is that, Prabhuji? That word which is called the center of the centralized theme of the Bhagavad Gita. 1515. That's what Srivinam Das Prabhu has told me, Prabhuji. I also don't know. That this is like the essence, this is like the pivotal center of the whole Bhagavad Gita, Prabhuji, 1515. Where Krishna is trying to tell us that he knows, Prabhuji, he knows our past, he knows our present, and he knows our future. So that's why he's directing us. So when we try to, through our consciousness, what we say, consciousness, through our consciousness, if we try to hear him, that is what is surrender, Prabhuji. That's the point I wanted to mention. Hare Krishna.
Nice. Thank you for echoing, and And Krishna here is giving a lot of information in terms of his sometimes by 50s and 60s people tend to forget, and quite a lot of this forgetfulness and our ability to remember or forget or is because we are not surrender. We are constantly in anxious position. So once a person is surrender, he realizes that the supreme who he is surrendered to will take care, so the headache is gone. But constantly we think we are the master, and we actually just because before this my laptop was working fine, and all of a sudden the Zoom had put some plugins and I see all these apps on the right. So so every step of the way there are challenges, little challenges, and these challenges, if you have not seen little challenges, it really puts us off, and more we become steady in our focus, in our surrender, in surrendering our consciousness, surrendering our knowledge for the service. We become calm and composed, and you might have seen it in your lives. You if you're not experiencing, maybe we have to spend more time, but this bhakti or the surrendering process is such a calming influence that it has to be experienced, and it will help us in many different ways. Thank you, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, very good point you have told. Yeah, so that only comes through association with the devotees, Prabhuji. Like, for example, he must be Krishna must be giving constantly. He's trying to give us the indications through our circumstances. But unless we introspect and we figure out that okay, this might be the issue, or this is what we call the market correction. Similarly, he's trying to give us correction situations where if we are in association with the devotees, we realize and we try to correct ourselves. Otherwise, we think, as you have rightly told, Prabhuji, we will think we are the doers. Okay, so I am not successful in this, or I am successful in because of me. We don't think that it is because of the divinity. We think it is because of me. So that is very valid point. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Any other comments, corrections, realizations? Yeah, it's very quiet today.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare
All
Krishna.
Gurus to Srila Bhagavad.
All Krishna.
Yeah, Prabhuji, very good example. Thank you so much. I can see like this verse, I can see there is one more verse where 10.20, where Krishna also says same thing, that I am situated everyone's, every living beings. And from like he is the like starting, beginning, middle, and end of everything. Just wanted to like link this verse with the 10.20, which is like same like Krishna says that. So Prabhuji, how do we realize every time, right, the super soul is that? Because if we realize that, then we won't do any kind of bad things, okay. But that realization is not with us for all the time, okay. Sometimes we realize, sometimes we forgetful, right? So how can we do it like every time we realize that, right? If someone is looking at us every time, so that it will help us to do wrong things, right?
Yeah, so very nice question. See, we like most of the time, like say for example, you have a propensity to eat sweets, for example, and you are under the surrender of your mom, and mom says, okay, for this today, you can't eat more than 2 sweets. But when you have a desire to eat more than 2 sweets, you would end up doing that when your mom is not around. So, so we have a tendency to make our own decisions because we have that ulterior motive without knowing that that is good or bad. And that's the reason why many times you might have seen this. There are insects, they would also getting burned, but they will still go and get. So that sense of ignorance prevails. And you're right. I mean, it's nobody is perfect, and quite a lot of time there are many bright people, the presidents or prime ministers, they end up doing silly things. It is sincerely because they have not been trained to have that sense of surrender in all their situations. If you look at it, Srila Prabhupada was was having a lot of problems while starting ISKCON, but he never lost sight of the Supreme in any decision making he ended up doing. So when Srila Prabhupada was coming on the freight ship, everybody said, Srila Prabhupada, you're going to America. And Srila Prabhupada, without having that sense of ahankar, he said, no, I'm not going to America. Srimad Bhagavatam is going to America. I'm just carrying it as a transportation of Srimad Bhagavatam to America. So everything he ended up doing, he dovetailed that as a service, as a service. And more and more we recognize in that sweets example or whatever example which is actually taking us away, that pacemaker, right? What is this pacemaker does? The pacemaker, when the sensor or the current in the heart is not going well, the pacemaker gives a um, gives a trigger in a mechanical way, which kind of prompts the heart to beat so that the person can live longer. Likewise, we need to have Krishna conscious pacemakers in our life, that, hey, constant association. Wherever you go, whether it is South Jersey, North Jersey, always have some association. Talk to devotees. How is the chanting going on? How is your reading going on? So constant alert. How is prasadam? So that's why when this counselors of ISKCON, the brahmacharis who are constantly attached to the households to see how bhakti is going, they constantly ask, how is chanting going on? How is this thing? So what are they doing? They are not, whatever pious credits you are doing by chanting is yours. They have nothing, but they have that sense of association. And always when you have that sense of association, you always talk about it, or don't miss the 7:30 on Saturday, or don't miss the festivals, going to temple whenever you get. So constantly you remember, and sometimes you realize a very close-knit society like ISKCON, when somebody doesn't come for 2-3 weeks at a stretch, or you see somebody after 2-3 weeks, you realize you start feeling the absence of him. So they become part and parcel of a family. And when part or parcel of family is established, you ask, okay, how is everything? How is bhakti? This, that. So then you are constantly alert. So the Krishna Conscious Association acts as a bhakti pacemaker in your life, and that really helps us. Is that okay, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Any other comments, questions? So happy Makar Sankranti to everyone. Today is a very profound day in terms of a lot of things happened today. But this verse 15.15, which Bhakti Ratnakar Prabhu was also mentioning, it's the essence of so many concepts, and so it's a very profound verse. So whenever somebody is having headache or somebody is thirsty, give them amrutanjan or get him a glass of water. That shows your devotion to them. That shows the care. And once that care is built in your family, you will have that sense of care for the Supreme, who is constantly watching you. And don't just hear that the person is thirsty and do nothing. That's not how a Krishna conscious or human being should behave in this world. And the compassion and shunning cruelty is something which helps all of us in getting better individuals. So, if there is no other thoughts, we can end here. So let's all pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Vaishnavas by sending Vancha Kalpataru Vaishya Sindhu Vayevacha
Patitanam
Patitanam
Pavanebhyo
Pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo Namo Vaishnavanda Ki Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Jai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol